One of the biggest myths that I hear about VA loans is that every veteran automatically qualifies. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. I have personally talked with veterans who assumed they were eligible for a VA loan, only to find out later that they didn't actually meet the service requirements. And sometimes that realization happens at the worst possible moment for that veteran, like when they're already trying to buy a home that they've had their eye on. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly who qualifies for a VA loan, who may not qualify, and a few situations where veterans assume they aren't eligible, but actually are. If you've served, or if you're currently serving, this is something about your VA loan benefit that you definitely want to understand. If we have not met yet, I'm the Loan Caddy. I'm a GWAT veteran and currently still serving in the Army Reserve. In the last few years, I've been a mortgage broker specializing in VA loans on the civilian side. And this video is part of my VA Loan Masterclass series, where I break down how the VA loan actually works so that veterans can understand their benefits and use them correctly. Because the VA loan is one of the most powerful home buying benefits available, but only if you know how it works. But before we get into the eligibility requirements, there's one thing I want to clarify because this confuses a lot of people. Being eligible for a VA loan is not the same thing as getting a loan approved. Eligibility simply means that you've earned the privilege to use the VA home loan benefit through your military service. Approval means that a lender's reviewed your financial situation and determined that you qualify for a mortgage. So in this video, we're focusing specifically on the eligibility side of things, whether or not you've earned the benefit. So there are three main categories of service that typically qualify someone for a VA loan. Those are active duty service members, veterans who have already separated from service, and members of the National Guard or Reserve. Now let's walk through each one individually. If you're currently serving on active duty, you can usually become eligible for a VA loan after 90 continuous days of service during wartime. For many service members, that means that eligibility can happen fairly early in their career. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that you should buy a house right away. There are a lot of other things that you have to consider, like your duty station stability, future PCS moves, and your long-term plans overall. But the important takeaway is that eligibility can happen a lot sooner than many people expect. I've had active duty clients who were surprised to learn that they qualified well before they thought they would. For veterans who have already separated from service, eligibility depends mainly on how long you serve and when you serve. Generally speaking, the requirements are at least 90 days of service during wartime or 181 days of service during peacetime. Most veterans who completed a normal enlistment contract are going to meet these requirements. However, there are a few situations where someone might not qualify. For example, if someone separated very early from service and did not complete the minimum service requirement, they may not have earned the benefit just yet. That said, there are also some exceptions. Some veterans who were medically discharged or separated due to service-connected disabilities may still qualify even if they didn't meet the full service requirement. So every situation can be a little different, and it's always worth taking a look so that you know. Now let's talk about the members of the National Guard and Reserve, because this is where a lot of confusion tends to come up for many of these veterans. I've spoken with many Guard and Reserve members who just automatically assumed that they weren't eligible for a VA loan. But oftentimes, that's not true at all. In most cases, Guard or Reserve members become eligible after 6 years of service. However, there's an important exception built into this. If a Guard or Reserve member was activated under federal orders, they may qualify much sooner. For example, many Guard and Reserve members who were activated after 9/11 became eligible for VA loan benefits because of that federal activation. So if you served in the Guard or Reserve and you're not sure whether you qualify, it's definitely worth checking out. You may be surprised. So over the years, I've heard a lot of reasons why veterans think that they may not qualify for a VA loan. Some of the most common ones are things like, I never deployed, I was only in the National Guard, or I didn't serve 20 years. And sometimes somebody will say something like, I only did one enlistment, so I probably don't qualify. But the reality is that none of those things are required for VA loan eligibility. Deployment's not required, 20 years of service is not required, and Guard and Reserve members can absolutely qualify. That's why it's always a good idea to verify your eligibility rather than just assuming that you don't have the benefit, because we all know what happens when you assume. One thing I see pretty often is veterans assuming that they don't qualify simply because nobody ever explained how the benefit works to them while they were in service. For a lot of people, the VA loan is something they may hear about briefly during transition briefings or separation counseling. And by the time they actually start thinking about buying a home years later, the details can be pretty fuzzy. So they end up assuming that they probably don't qualify or forget about the benefit altogether. But the reality is that millions of veterans have earned this benefit and simply just haven't used it yet. That's one of the reasons I put together this VA Loan Masterclass series, to make sure veterans actually understand the benefits that they've earned through their service. I've actually seen this happen quite a few times in my day-to-day. A veteran will come to me thinking that they can't use a VA loan, and it turns out they've been eligible this entire time. Sometimes they've been renting for years when they could have been using one of the best home loan benefits available to them. And that's one of the reasons I'm making these videos, to help veterans understand how this benefit actually works so that they can leverage it to build wealth. Now, the good news is that figuring out whether you're eligible for the VA loan benefit is usually pretty straightforward. There are 3 common ways that your eligibility can be verified. The first way is through your certificate of eligibility, which we're going to talk a lot more about in detail in the next video. The second way is through the VA's online system, where lenders can often retrieve your eligibility electronically in just a few minutes. And the third way is by submitting your DD-214 or service records directly to the VA if the automated system can't verify it. In most cases, when someone applies for a VA loan, the lender will actually pull the certificate of eligibility for them. So you usually don't even have to track it down yourself. So that being said, the official document that proves that you're eligible for a VA loan is called the Certificate of Eligibility, sometimes referred to as the COE. This document confirms to lenders that you've earned the VA loan benefit through your military service. It essentially tells the lender this: yes, this home borrower is eligible to use the VA loan home program. The good news is that getting your certificate of eligibility is usually pretty simple. And in the next video, I'm going to break it down exactly. I'll get into what the certificate of eligibility is, how to get it, and why it matters when you're using your VA loan benefit. So to recap what we talked about today, VA loan eligibility is based on your military service. Most people qualify through one of 3 categories: active duty, veterans who've completed their required period of service, or National Guard and Reserve members who meet the eligibility requirement. But remember, eligibility simply means that you've earned the privilege to utilize the VA home loan benefit. It does not automatically mean that a lender will approve you for the mortgage you're looking for. Loan approval still depends on things like your credit, your income, and your other overall financial qualification. But the first step is always going to be confirming that you actually have the benefit available to use. So if you're a veteran or service member and you're not sure whether you're eligible for the VA loan benefit, feel free to drop a comment below. I'm always happy to help point people in the right direction. And if you want to learn how to use the VA loan properly, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because this is the VA Loan Masterclass series, and we're going to be walking step by step through everything veterans need to know about VA loan. And in the next video, we'll talk about the certificate of eligibility and how you can go about getting it. I'll see you on the next hole.